We aren't here to be cute. Nothing is cute about it.
It's more than just tackling climate change. It's about uniting young people.
I just want to talk about a climate crisis again.
Camera person here. We were sick and fed up with our leaders ignoring us just because we don't have a vote.
We have to act now.
It's procrastination to save the world, you feel?
Can we pull it off like the adults do?
You know, I can't just pass. I need to do really well. And
you're asking a bunch of high school students to try and offer you solutions when we got homework to do.
Never read the Facebook comments.
I feel like they only want it to be student-led in name.
I have to toss up between school or strike. I don't want to skip out on my sack and get a 0 for that.
I'm so excited for this day.
So we have about 10 minutes before this officially starts.
This is what democracy looks like.
All right, so Rob, thank you so much for jumping on board for this climactic episode at such short notice. We are on the morning of Monday, the 16th of March, and I understand this is quite a special day for you because was it just this morning or last night that something you've been working on for over a year has gone live?
Yeah, it was yesterday. So episode 1 dropped on YouTube for Youth on Strike, and the first part of a 3-part series.
God, it's fantastic. So the other 2 parts are coming out weekly from this point?
No, we thought we would go all in the 1 week, especially given, especially with YouTube people, we want to be able to capture someone if they really enjoyed one episode that have that next episode available. So episode 2 is tomorrow, Tuesday, and then episode 3 is Thursday. So by the end of the week, all 3 episodes are out.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so listeners to this are going to have me at a disadvantage because I've only seen the first episode, but probably by the time this comes out, I'm aiming for probably tomorrow, Tuesday, or probably Wednesday at latest.
Yeah, they'll be ahead of you.
They will be, so I'm going to sound like an idiot. But luckily, a lot of these people, a lot of the stars of this show who did the vlogging, the organizers of School Strike for Climate, a lot of them have been previous guests on Climactic, and I've some of them I've gotten to know fairly well, and I'm really privileged actually to call them friends, but also it's weird as someone who's going to turn 30 here in a few weeks. They're really kind of role models and people I look up to in a lot of ways. So maybe get started here with this amazing project. How did it sort of come about in the broad strokes? I know it's a big story, but when did it get started?
Well, I was actually researching a project which had some similar themes, but it was actually about youth inequality in a generational kind of scale, looking at the inequalities between different generations. And so, which obviously led me on to climate change as being one of those big areas. And so I actually reached out to a couple of journalists who had interviewed a few of the students who were part of the 2018 strike. And once I started talking to them and speaking to them and hearing about their plans for March 2019, I became really interested in knowing more and hearing more of their story. And it was around that time where there was a lot of talk in the media from commentators and leaders who really should know better, talking around these young people being, whatever the wording was, but things like no hopers or learning to line up for the dole and all those silly things. And I remember hearing that and thinking, this just could not be further from the truth. I was speaking to young people who were really intelligent, articulate, emotionally mature, and could really map out why they were feeling this way and then back themselves up with evidence and reasoned argument. And it was just not something we weren't actually seeing in the media or from leadership. And so, I started speaking to them and starting to learn their stories. And I'd worked on a series previously with the ABC that used the vlogging style and that kind of technique. And one of the important things about the youth strike was that we were elevating young people's voices and making sure that they were at the center. And so I wanted to take that approach into how we tell this story and how we produce the series. And at that stage, I didn't really know what it was going to be. It was a passion project. I was looking at doing a short film. I wasn't sure if any of this would actually work. And so I started working with about a dozen students all around Australia, helping them to tell their story, giving them advice, guiding them on what to vlog and how to vlog. then collecting the footage over many months and just sitting there crossing my fingers that we would have something that could make some kind of coherent story.
So how did it feel then after that first strike attracted the amount of media attention and just sort of popular awareness, sort of breakthrough it had? Did you feel pretty excited and sort of vindicated straight away by the reaction after that first day?
I think so, yeah. And I think what was also still coming out of it was that there was a lot of media written by adults. And around that time, there was a study done into whenever they were speaking about issues that affected young people, how many young voices were actually part of the debate. And it was something like under 3% in the media. There was I can't remember, don't quote me on that, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But I remember hearing that going, that's just crazy. So it really did back up thoughts around giving young people the tools to tell the story and making sure that their voices were center in this.
So you got to these people quite early on in the piece. So they started vlogging at least a month before the March strike of 2019. How was it sort of reaching out to them, and how big a task was that, convincing them to, on top of organizing a massive strike and life and school, to sort of record their thoughts?
That was, I think, the most challenging part of the production part of the project, was that they were all really busy, and many of them were in year 12, and many of them were key organisers or had a lot to do with organising their local strike. And so they were really, really busy. And, it was a really fine line of how much we could ask them to film. And, it was something that I'd learned from other productions and documentaries with young people, is you really kind of got to allow them to take the lead on how much they want to say and how much they want to do. And so, if I was getting footage and it wasn't exactly what I thought it should be or what I wanted it to be, it was about letting go of my expectations and what I thought and working with what they were actually able to do. And, and we had quite a difference in schedule between all of the students when they were delivering footage. Some were delivering it every single day via a Google Drive that I'd set up. So I could see exactly what they were filming and I could give feedback. There were several others I didn't actually get the footage back, for a month after the strike. So I had no idea whether they had recorded their story or whatever they had recorded. I was on a roller coaster of stress and nervousness and happiness through all these different moments where I was getting this footage coming through. And as I was watching it, some days were like, this is amazing. Some days were, I don't know if I can tell a story. So it was really, really up and down until I got everything.
The production story is something we could spend at least an hour on solely, just by itself. At the end of that journey, when you kind of were starting to shape up a piece of media, what was it like sort of deciding on how it was going to be presented, what the final product was essentially going to be? And was it a matter of kind of just looking around at potential partners, having lots of conversations and seeing what was possible, or did you kind of have a vision in mind as you started to get maybe sort of halfway through that production process?
Yeah, it started to make a bit of sense to me as I was looking through the footage, and I actually didn't want to say anything to anyone, and I kept saying to the students, this is just an experiment to see what we can get. And so it wasn't until I'd really collected all the footage and I put together kind of what I called, the best grabs from across the series to look at doing a pitch trailer. It was only until that moment I realized, okay, there's an actual story here, because it's one point to have lots of voices and opinions and things, but we really wanted to tell a narrative story. And that meant that we had to go on a journey with a beginning and a middle and an end. And each of these, characters in the story had to have their own point, why were they there and what was at stake for them? And, they had to mean something. So, there was a lot of consideration gone into making sure that became, this became a story rather than a collection of just video blogs or a montage of sequences. So once we kind of worked that out, I went to Screen Australia and applied for a production grant, and luckily we were lucky enough to get it. And then that wasn't the full amount. And so I kind of started looking around for a partner, and being that I really want the series to reach a wide audience, to be available and accessible for anyone, and also to really appeal to young people, we kind of wanted to focus on trying to find an online partner. We know that there's been lots of really successful environmental documentaries previously, and there's some amazing work out there, but we also do know that the cinema audience is a lot older, and to what we were seeing in the youth strikes. And so we wanted to try to reach that audience and go with them. So luckily enough, we partnered with Junkee, and this was, I think, would be their first external commission. So they were really excited, and it was something that they really wanted to look at and do as well, being that they had covered the youth strikes, really, really well. And so once they signed up, we were going then, and we could start post-production straight away.
That's fantastic. And from just watching the first episode this morning, it seems incredibly there's a lot of work that goes into making it seem as light touch and sort of unedited as it seems. It seems just to flow. And other than a few kind of title cards or bits where you've got sort of just a little bit of text to tell the development of the story or show the passage of time, the only thing that's on the screen is the students themselves talking into their phones, telling the story themselves. So that's probably really deceptive in how much actual work went in, isn't it?
Incredibly deceptive. And I'm glad you feel that way, though, because that means we did the job well.
Yes.
It comes across well. But when I first sat down with Laura Worth, who is the editor, we spent 3 weeks just throwing story cards around. We turned my back room at my house into we covered the entire wall here with about 40 story cards just stuck on the wall, just going, how do we tell this? Because there's so much footage. And so, we really just kind of picked and chose the best kind of video blogs that told particular stories. And we had to lose a lot of really great material because you don't want it to become too cutty, because as soon as you're cutting from 5 or 6 blogs in a sequence rather than just 2 or 3, it loses that feeling of you're sitting with that character and that feeling of this is a video blog. And we really wanted to kind of make sure that we kept it in the style and of what you would usually see in a video blog on, say, YouTube.
I'm fascinated, and I did just enough to film studies in uni to be dangerous. So I could talk your ear off about that. But I'm really especially interested by, beyond the media aspect, is the climate media. And I'm kind of curious, as being the first external commission by Junkee, do you see the funding opportunities and also the distribution? Where does more content like this, where does it come from, and how does it get out there? Do you kind of see this project as kind of maybe a bit of a trailblazer for more content specifically about the climate movement in Australia coming along behind it?
I hope so. I mean, when the strikes were being organised, I was told by one of the students that there was 15 documentaries being made at the time about the strikes, which I thought was both awesome and also quite scary. This was kind of the only one that was saying, here, you students, you film it and we'll put it together, we'll help you tell your story. So it was a bit more collaborative. But I think and this is just a trend in the last 10 years anyway, with all organizations and brands and movements, is the power of storytelling. And I think, out of the strike, we saw lots and lots and lots of videos, and they had great footage and music and graphics, and these are all really important videos and messages, but they really do only appeal to the converted crowd already. And so when you go into storytelling, we're trying to do something, we're trying to tell a story that reaches a wide audience and brings people along the journey. And then hopefully by creating these characters and showing the vulnerability of young people and taking them on this journey, that they will relate to them, and by the end they're supporting them and barracking for them. So I think that's the power of storytelling, compared to kind of just your normal kind of promo video.
Absolutely. I think, I agree completely, and that was really well said. And I was going to ask, did you see a group like the Climate Council or ACF, AYCC, all the kind of climate organizations? Did you think about approaching them, or did you have conversations with them? And how do you kind of view, instead of having a group like that behind this production, that you do have Junkee, a more, as you say, mainstream, cross-sectional, definitely skewing younger demographically, but a kind of mainstream publication? Was there a decision you had to make there around who you were going to partner with?
Yeah, there was. Our original plan was to approach a large range of environmental groups and release it ourselves. But releasing anything on the internet is a lot harder than I think people realize, because, you've got to battle through the 1 million cat videos that are out there. So, you've got to build that crowd and build that audience and build the interest, as well as, I think, finding someone who already has an audience. It's really hard to build your own audience from the ground up, But going to Junkee, they already have that audience. Their skill set is reaching people and reaching their audience with this kind of content. So that just made sense to go to them. And being that it's on YouTube, all those groups like the ACF and AYCC can hopefully then access that episode and that story and the whole series and share it and use it wherever they feel like they can. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, it is. And not to maybe put it transactionally, but I'm kind of curious what you think Junkee gets out of that in return. Like, why, by this being their first external commission, do they leave themselves open for kind of criticism from a traditional industries, federal government, like an anti-climate messaging attack on Junkee for showing this kind of content?
Potentially. I mean, the internet is filled with trolls anyway, so anytime you put anything out there, you're always opening yourself up. But I think Junkee is very progressive anyway. It does appeal to a progressive audience, and they had already covered and done a lot of work on the climate change space anyway. So I felt quite comfortable that they were the right people to take this through and that they would handle it in the right way as well.
That's great. I know it's early days. It's only been out for a few hours so far, but how does it feel to have it out? And then what have the early responses been? I know you've had a couple screening events. I know you unfortunately had to cancel the one in Melbourne, which I understand is painful, but it's the right decision to make, I know. But what's it been like, kind of the roller coaster ride over the last few days?
Well, the world has changed quite unexpectedly, since we first decided to launch it on March 15th. That with the coronavirus heading out there, it has radically changed the landscape. And so, we'd always planned to release it on March 15th to kind of celebrate a 1 year on from the story that we were telling. We just thought there was some nice synergy with that. So, I think the take up of it is going to be a little slower than what we originally expected, and we've kind of shifted our expectations from short-term to more long-term approach to it, just because I think, rightly so, there's a lot of focus on virus and the virus preparation, what's happening in the world right now, and but that will eventually calm down, and people will need positive stories, and I think an energetic, positive story told by young people about the future that has a whole lot of hope in it is probably something that people really need at the moment. So hopefully
it's the antidote people need.
Yeah, exactly. And so hopefully they'll find it on YouTube, when they're when they're having to work from home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going into a phase of everyone's going to be a bit content starved. They won't have the commute time as much, but they will have the, hey, I can have something on in the background while I do my work. That's nice.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, the thing that we really wanted to do with the series was not to make anything that was too doom and gloomy, to make sure that it had a real positive message and an energy to it that by the end you felt hopeful. And so I hope that by the end of the series, that really kind of carries through and, and inspires other people to kind of have that same hope, but also to take action as well and demand action.
So any more projects in the works at this point, Rob? Have you got, teams of young people out in other parts of the country or other parts of the world recording themselves at the moment?
I wish we had discussed that. I think there was a little bit of wait and see to see how the series got out and how it was received before we made any decisions. We made this entire production, with very, very little money. So we had basically nothing left when we got to the end of making it. So then trying to market it was just a whole different thing. We're looking at other options and we're hoping that we can do something, further in the future.
Oh, that's exciting. So watch this space for more. And if you watch it and you like it, well, it's kind of up to all of us to make it a success. Well, Rob, so sort of say a self-serving question here a little bit. Climactic, this podcast is coming up on being 2 years old next month in April. And it's been a very fun and interesting and sometimes really it feels very toiling road of trying to tell stories about the climate crisis. I'm curious if you got just a couple things here quickly, main things you learned about not only, the art of making film and making short film and then getting it produced and funding and all that, but about how you're personally relating to the climate crisis. Because to call back to the very start, I've been personally really inspired and filled with hope by meeting some of the young people that are in this project. I'm curious how you kind of felt as well, getting to watch hours of footage from them kind of speaking from their hearts.
I think I felt the same way as you. You know, there was a point in time, and I think many people had said this in the media. There was a point in time, kind of in 2018, where, you know, there was a lot of, I think, depression and anxiety around climate change, and it was, you know, it just kept butting heads against anyone who was trying to take action, and just felt like we were getting nowhere, and it was just, you know, this constant doom, you know, on the horizon, and then, you know, it just didn't feel like we could do anything, and then, you know, school students basically showed us the way, and I think that was a kind of a turning point, and all of a sudden, you know, and I know many of them don't want want us to be talking about them as just, you know, you know, they give us hope or whatever, but they really do give us hope, and they really do inspire us. And that was part of, you know, what kind of, you know, inspired this project was, okay, I'm not a young person anymore, so how can I best support them? You know, and this was kind of hopefully my way of being able to support that movement and support what they're doing.
It's a wonderful answer, and I'm sure they appreciate as well that you tried to make something about this, but you weren't grabbing the mic. You were giving it to them, and you were giving them a platform. Have you heard very much back from the students, from the young people, from the stars of the show, about what it feels like for them being in this project? Yeah,
and so before it was released, we all met up together in two different groups, because, you know, we really took duty of care quite seriously with them. So we showed them the cuts before they're released, so that they were across everything, and gave them the chance to ask questions and talk about it, and, you know, go through a little bit of what to expect when it comes out. Didn't quite cover the virus element, didn't quite know about that, but, you know, what to expect when it comes out, how to handle different things, and just kind of talking about what it means to be in a documentary. Because a lot of times I think when people are filmed and watch themselves later on, they say, oh, that's not me, that's not who I am. It's like, well, it isn't anymore, but documentaries are a snapshot in time. So this was, you know, what you were at this point in your lives, and when you're at that age, you change dramatically within a couple of months. Yeah. And so I think that's what a lot of the feedback has been from the students who are in it, who have said, they're gone, I can't believe how much I've grown or developed since then. And this, in organising and being part of the strikes was a big part of their development. And, you know, when we did the talk with Junkee in Sydney, and we had a couple of them speak, they spoke a lot about how the climate strikes really helped them develop a whole range of skills and confidence they just wouldn't have never got anywhere else. And so on kind of a final note from them, there was a couple of them that kind of said, you know, we felt like the movement and young people in the movement had got a little bit pessimistic after the election and after things had happened. But it was really nice to kind of watch back and see how positive and the energy we had at that time. And, you know, hopefully that will kind of help re-energize a lot of them as well.
Oh, they're wise beyond their years.
They are.
It's so great to get to spend time with them. Rob, it's been great to get to meet you and jump on this call with you. You know, just from last week, from getting an invite from you to the Melbourne premiere, to then the roller coaster of that unfortunately having to be cancelled, to you agreeing today after I saw the first episode to quickly jump on and do this. You've been a trooper, and I'm really excited to meet some more people in this space making media, really, really good media that brings people in, that is an on-ramp, that isn't just preaching to the choir. Thank you very much for that, Rob.
No worries. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, anytime.
I pay my respects to all other Aboriginal people who are gathered here today, their ancestors and their elders.
When I was a kid, there wasn't the movement to get behind stuff like this.
And we'd just like to acknowledge how massive this crowd is, everyone.
Hi, we're Callum, Malou and Harriet, and we're from Castlemaine.
We cannot let fear stop us from action, as it has stopped our leaders. We will fight this climate emergency, and we will win, but only if we fight it together.
We are fighting! We are not drowning! This is our future we're fighting for.
Political leaders, we're calling you out. Our young people are here to tell you that our people will keep fighting for our right to stay alive, to influence your decisions on what that's going to do to the Pacific and what it's already doing.
So it's time for the politicians and adults to stop relying on our generation to fix our planet, give us air we can breathe, and a future on our planet.
event like this gives people an enormous amount of power to feel that they're not strange, that they should be concerned and that others share that concern.
No, 50,000, 50, yeah, pretty crazy.
It brings you out of that sort of isolated state and you get to like share it with other people.
We know that most politicians don't want to talk to us. Good. We don't want to talk to them either.
I go and speak to a lot of young people. Young people get it.
When the world is in critical drought, we will not be able to eat money. When our waters are contaminated with plastic and are completely polluted, we will not be able to drink oil.
Big round of applause for AYCC, which is the Australian Youth Climate Coalition. For SEED, which is the Indigenous Youth Climate Network.
200,000 people attended the strike today, which is absolutely amazing.
As we're seeing, these kids are so articulate and passionate about this subject. Real magic going on right around the world. We're just not hearing enough about it.
We were planning for 50,000.
Whoa.
And we got 200,000. And
I choose something bigger than me. And if one person is affected by this, then we're doing the work. Because sometimes the work is just one person at a time. But that's what it takes.
How dare you, Scott Morrison, tell us, the people who have survived bushfires, that it's not time to talk about climate change.
We have so many incredible people that are doing amazing things and creating amazing products and amazing ways to be able to make Earth a safer, happier place.
You're listening to Climactic, the voice of the climate community.
The Climactic Collective.